welcome to today's New Economy Fireside Chat with me, Ashish Mehra. I'm the Chief Research Officer at Markets and Markets. At M&M, we take great pride in transforming market intelligence into revenue impact for our clients. And we focus on researching disruptive, emerging technologies and futuristic trends which would lead to significant shifts in your revenues in the coming 5 to 10 years. Through this New Economy Fireside Chats, our objective really is to share actionable insights on new revenue growth opportunities emanating from disruptions in your ecosystem or your client's ecosystem. And these insights are mostly based on the client work that we do as well as our own research. Now, our topic for today's Fireside Chat is decarbonization. And I'm very pleased to welcome Ashish Badola, my guest, who leads our energy practice. Ashish, would you just want to say a couple of words?
Thank you for having me in this show, Ashish. Pleasure to be a part of such a discussion, which is of high importance today. And topics such as decarbonization, sustainability, resource recycling, and hydrogen economy are of great interest to me personally. And of late, we've also been working a lot on all of these topics. Happy to be a part of this meeting today.
Thank you so much, Ashish. And before I start with the questions that I have for you, for our audience, let me just lay down a brief context. So folks, decarbonization and carbon neutrality is really becoming important in our world today. And the situation related to global warming has been quite alarming. The last time when global average temperatures were 2 degrees warmer, sea levels were about 6 meters higher. And to put that in context, that would mean that cities like Miami, Shanghai, Osaka, and entire countries like, for example, the Maldives would sink underwater, displacing more than 300 million people worldwide, right? Now, a very important tenet of controlling global warming is decarbonization. And numerous power utilities, oil and gas companies, manufacturing companies have committed hundreds of billions of dollars of investment towards their decarbonization initiatives. And this has really opened up interesting revenue growth opportunities for companies assisting them in these initiatives, like, for example, industrial automation companies like a Schneider or a Rockwell, or technology companies, whether it's giants like a Microsoft or a Google, or even service companies like an Accenture, IBM, Infosys, and so on. So Ashish, in today's chat, I'd really like to share with you, I'd like you to share some insights on the revenue growth opportunities for these companies on account of the decarbonization investments, right? And I know a lot has been talked about when it comes to developed markets. At least in my client conversations, I'm seeing a lot more interest in emerging markets. So let's focus a bit more on the emerging markets. Would that be good, Ashish?
Absolutely. I think emerging markets will hold the key towards decarbonization because they're in need of a lot of financing as well as a lot of technology intervention. So yes, I think that's definitely a great topic to discuss.
Lovely. So Ashish, let's start with my first question, something that is often asked. Which are the most important emerging markets when it comes to decarbonization investments from the lens of an industrial automation or a technology company?
Sure. I think if you look at the emerging markets across the globe, right, we've personally been looking and investigating around markets around East Asia, North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America. And while our analysis have shown that there is a lot of potential across different emerging markets across the globe, we've highlighted close to about 8 to 10 key markets where we see significant potential from a decarbonization perspective. And those markets, if you really talk about, from a potential perspective and standpoint, markets such as China, India, Indonesia, and a bunch of other markets in Middle East, Southeast Asia are all holding great potential from a decarbonization standpoint today.
And which ones would be your top 3 picks and why?
I think that's interesting because our analysis suggests that while we've looked at a bunch of those 8 to 10 markets, we've gone deep to understand and study that markets, as you can also see on the screen, markets such as India, China, and Indonesia are some of the top markets where there is immense potential from a decarbonization standpoint. And while we've evaluated these markets, some of the things that we've gone deep and studied about these markets is looked at how the carbon emission trend has been in those markets, what's the decarbonization potential, and how does that look from a future standpoint, what is their NDCs with regards to Paris agreements, and what sort of renewable energy consumption growth rates we are witnessing in these markets. So all of those parameters and a bunch of other economic factors included, we've arrived at conclusions that markets like China, India, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Brazil are amongst the top 5 markets which score high in our benchmarking.
That's great. And Ashish, if I may ask, which are the most interesting end-use industries which industrial automation and technology companies should focus on in these top 5 that you just outlined?
Yeah, that's also pretty interesting because we also did a second layer of analysis in all of these top 4 or 5 markets. And what we figured out is there is a strong pattern with regards to which are the most interesting sectors that needs immediate attention. So we've looked at a bunch of different industrial processes / industries in these countries. And we've figured out that markets such as oil and gas, power generation, and then a bunch of manufacturing related industries such as cement manufacturing, steel, metals and mining are all key markets that needs to be decarbonized. And the reason why I say so is because close to about 50 to 60% of overall decarbonization in these markets is emanating from all of these high process complex industries.
Got it. And Ashish, within these end-use industries that you just spoke about, which ones are some of the most promising technology interventions? And if you could just give a few examples for each of these, that would be very useful to our audience.
Right. I think I'd want to split that into 2 parts. So if you take a view of what's happening in these emerging markets, so such as India and China, for example, right? While they have a similar pattern, but the way they are tackling that situation is slightly different, right? So you'll see a lot of focus around renewable energy that's being placed, a lot of focus on how to decarbonize transportation with the whole EV penetration story, and more so specifically in the Chinese market. But if you look at how are these different sectors being decarbonized, right? We've seen, and let me take an example of a sector like oil and gas for that matter, right? Now, oil and gas, if you look at where there are opportunities from a decarbonization standpoint, I think material efficiency, technology performance, electrification, hydrogen are the top 4 or 5 categories that needs to be tackled first. And then if you look at it from a value chain standpoint, we've seen that all elements within the value chain, which is exploration, drilling, production, separation, transportation, they all need different kind of technology interventions. And here's the second part of the answer to it. So if you look at exploration for that matter, and more specifically from an industrial automation / technology company standpoint, they're focusing more on technologies such as drones, also about remote sensing. And then if you look at drilling, there are technologies around the whole manless rigs, hybrid rigs, automated flaring. That's an interesting technology because a lot of focus and attention from oil and gas is being on how do they really manage their emissions through flaring. And then there are other bunch of technologies such as digital oil field. Again, that's interesting because we've noticed that the industrial automation market, in the whole digital oil field space is expected to grow from 15 billion to 20 billion in the next 5 odd years. And APAC will be the biggest market when it comes to digital oil fields. And similarly, if you look at the production space, I think CCUS will be an interesting technology, and the market there is expected to boom to grow to about close to about $8 billion by 2026. And again, North America and Europe are some of the leading geographies there. And then a lot of focus is also being laid on the transportation segment, where EVs, hydrogen intervention, blockchain for supply chain management is also being talked about. Yeah.
Great. What about power and utilities? What do you think are the most interesting technology interventions there from a decarbonization standpoint?
Yeah, I think power is another big sector where a lot of technology interventions are happening, again, at a value chain level. And if you look at what's happening from a basic fuel standpoint, right, we're talking already about a lot of renewable energy based power generation, and that's quite significant already in the Chinese and Indian market. And then a bunch of technologies around waste to energy. Geothermal is again top of the town in markets like China. Decentralized power, and that's a big area because we're already talking about the market reaching close to about $1 billion in 2026, and solar and wind related decentralized energy generation will lead that market. And then another area that really needs attention is the transmission and distribution side. And that's where we're seeing a lot of interventions through SCADA-based technologies, flexible AC transmission system and devices, also introduction of smart grids and microgrids, which are again expected to be over $100 billion industry in the next 4 or 5 years, smart meters. And then also some of the other technologies around solid state transformers, phasor measurement units, and so on. Yeah. So all of these technologies combined together, I think will have a great potential from a decarbonization standpoint in the power industry as well.
Lovely. Thank you. I think I'm good for now. I sincerely hope our audience is getting some good insights from this conversation. Thanks all for listening in. Thank you so much, Ashish, for sharing your perspectives.
Thank you for having me in this meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.